I've noticed we're losing subscribers. Not the YouTube kind, but the kind that swore they'd be in my life forever. Funny how that works. One day you're surrounded by people who claim to love you, and the next, you're watching them walk away like you were just another phase in their lives. By the way, if you're here, do me a favor, subscribe. It's free, and unlike some people in my life, you won't regret sticking around. I'm 27, recently engaged to the love of my life, and I should be over the moon. But instead, I had to make the hardest decision of my life. I cut off my parents. When I told them about my engagement, they seemed happy, but something felt off. I pushed the feeling aside until they called me again. That's when they dropped a bombshell. They wanted me to have a secret wedding. No big celebration, no family, just a quick, quiet ceremony. And the reason? My younger sister, Kelly. Kelly, 24, has always been a brat, spoiled, self-centered, and completely incapable of letting anyone else have a moment in the spotlight. Our entire childhood revolved around her tantrums, and my parents never stopped enabling her. The last time I saw her was 3 years ago, on my 25th birthday. She got drunk, made a scene, and humiliated me in front of all my friends. That was my breaking point. I blocked her, cut her off, and moved on with my life. My parents weren't happy about it, but I didn't care. Then last year they begged me to go to her wedding. I refused. And it turns out I dodged a bullet, because she married my ex. My first love. The guy who dumped me the night before prom because she asked him out. They told me she was innocent, but I knew better. I cried for hours, but that was just who Kelly was. Well, karma caught up with her. Her perfect marriage just ended in a scandal. Her husband cheated on her with his secretary for months. My parents, of course, are heartbroken for her. And that's why they wanted me to have a secret wedding. They didn't want her to feel hurt, seeing me happy while she was going through a divorce. My dad even refused to walk me down the aisle, saying he needed to be there for Kelly, and suggested I postpone my wedding altogether. That was it. I was done. I hung up on them. I was no longer going to be their second choice. A few days later, they started calling and texting nonstop, begging me not to send out wedding invitations to our family. They were terrified Kelly would find out. When I finally picked up, I told them they weren't welcome at my wedding either. They exploded. My mom started listing all the things they had done for me as if I owed them my happiness. Then they turned nasty. They called me a disappointment, said I was a waste of time and money, and even tried to spin it like I had always been the problem, not Kelly. They swore they'd make sure no one came to my wedding. I was heartbroken but not surprised. Then, out of nowhere, Kelly texted me. She wanted to meet. At first, I ignored her, but my curiosity got the best of me. I had to know what she wanted. So I met her. And what she told me shattered everything I thought I knew. She apologized. And I could tell she meant it. She cried. She told me she hated herself for what she had done to me, and she wished she could take it all back. But the real shock? She told me our parents were the ones who pitted us against each other. She admitted that growing up, she was desperate for their approval. They told her she had to be better than me. That she had to win at everything. Even when it came to my first boyfriend, they told her he was too good for me, and that he'd be better off with her. That's why she went after him. That's why she went after everything I ever had. And now she was miserable. She had spent her whole life competing for their love, and in the end, it left her with nothing. For the first time, I saw her as more than just the villain in my story. I didn't forgive her, not yet. But I finally understood her. As for my parents, I'm done. They can keep playing favorites, but I refuse to play their game anymore. Let me know if you'd like any more adjustments. Discovering the truth about my parents' manipulation shattered me. I had spent years resenting Kelly, blaming her for every wedge driven between me and our parents, only to realize it had been them all along. They had poisoned our relationship, pitting us against each other to fuel their twisted sense of control. The weight of that revelation hit me like a tidal wave. Sitting across from my sister in that small cafe, years of buried pain and resentment spilled out. We both cried, ugly, cathartic sobs that drew the curious glances of strangers. But for the first time in forever, I didn't care. The walls between us had finally crumbled. By the time we dried our tears, Kelly was my bridesmaid. It felt like a new beginning for both of us. And after everything she had been through with her divorce, she needed this fresh start as much as I did. But of course, my parents wouldn't let me have my happiness without a final act of sabotage. Update 3. A wedding without them. I'm officially a married woman. I know I should have updated sooner, but wedding planning swallowed my life whole. Every detail, every moment, it was everything Jonathan and I dreamed of. It was perfect. And my parents? They were nowhere to be found. Not that they didn't try to ruin it. Instead of simply declining the invitation, They launched a full-scale smear campaign against me. They called every relative they could reach, spinning wild lies about how my wedding was nothing more than a plot to humiliate Kelly. It was absurd, pathetic even. But I didn't have to lift a finger to defend myself. Kelly did it for me. She took to social media and exposed them for everything they had done, years of manipulation, the toxic games they played, the divide they created between us. She laid it all out, raw and unfiltered, for the entire family to see. It was a reckoning long overdue. And the best part? It worked. Our relatives saw through the lies. They came to the wedding standing by our side. Many of them had already cut ties with my parents for similar reasons, but now, even the ones who had clung to the illusion finally saw the truth. As for my parents, their anger was reduced to furious phone calls neither Kelly nor I answered. Now, I have everything I ever wanted. A husband who loves me, a sister I am finally reconnecting with, and a future free from the toxicity that once dictated my life. I don't speak to my parents anymore, and I don't regret it. They do not deserve me. They do not deserve Kelly. And for the first time in my life, I'm truly happy. As I entered my second trimester, I knew it was time for Janet to leave. But instead of confronting her and risking another exhausting argument, I took a different approach. I made sure she had somewhere to go before pushing her out of the nest. It wasn't manipulative, it was survival. And at first, everything worked out exactly as planned. Caleb got an apartment. Janet moved in with him. Problem solved. Or so I thought. Once Janet had a ring on her finger and a roof over her head, her entire attitude toward me changed. She became distant, cold, like I had never done anything for her. And then the final insult. She didn't even invite me to her engagement party. I confronted her. Her response? She called me a fool. She claimed I had never truly helped her, only pressured her to get a job and caused her stress. She said she was glad to be free of me, that she wanted nothing to do with me ever again. And then she blocked me. Fine. If that's how she wanted it, I had no reason to keep my deal with Caleb. I called him up and let him know I was pulling out. Janet was an adult. She could figure out her own finances. I wasn't going to spend another second worrying about her. I should have felt relief. But then suddenly Janet unblocked me, apologizing. And then my mother called. She told me I was being unreasonable and that pulling out of the deal was embarrassing for the family. That I was making things harder for Caleb when he had done nothing wrong. That I should have just talked to Janet like a normal person. Maybe she was right. Maybe I should have been more direct. But why was it always my responsibility to clean up Janet's mess? I had spent a year housing her, feeding her, dealing with her entitlement. And for what? To be discarded the second she didn't need me anymore? I was torn. I didn't want to look like the bad guy, but I also didn't want to help someone who had treated me like garbage. Update 1. A compromise. After thinking it over, I decided the only person I actually owed an explanation to was Caleb. He had trusted me. He had followed my advice. And even though I was furious with Janet, I didn't want to leave him in the lurch. I called him. I told him I would still cover Janet's rent, but only as a loan, one that needed to be paid back once Janet found a job. I made it clear that this wasn't about her anymore. This was about fairness. Caleb was relieved. He admitted he had been worried I would cut him off completely. He even encouraged me to make amends with Janet. Yeah, that's not happening. I'm done with my family. My mother has always enabled Janet's laziness, sending her money every month instead of pushing her to be independent. She ignored every warning I gave her. She failed me as much as she failed Janet. And now, instead of being happy for me, for my pregnancy, my growing family, she's more concerned about Janet's financial problems. I feel used. By Janet. By my mother. By everyone. So no, I don't regret cutting Janet off. I don't regret standing my ground. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. Because at the end of the day, I deserve better. I've decided, I'm not going to let my family's drama interfere with my life anymore. I'm stepping into a new chapter as a mother, and I want it to be a positive one. That means cutting off negativity even if it comes from my own mother and sister. I won't pretend it's easy. Aside from my in-laws, I don't have much family left. My father passed away when I was 7, and his side of the family drifted away soon after. Growing up, it was always just me, my mother, and Janet, us against the world. At least that's what I used to believe. Janet and I were inseparable as kids. But as we grew older, things changed. And now, after everything, I realize I'm better off without them. It might be lonely, but at least it'll be peaceful. And honestly, as long as I have my husband, that's all I need. Update 2. An unexpected visit. It's been 5 weeks since my last update. Today my mother showed up at my door. I wasn't expecting her. She never travels, she doesn't like overnight stays, and the last time she came here, it was just for Janet's engagement party. She flew back the next morning without even seeing me. But today she was standing on my doorstep. Apparently, she came because Janet wanted her to meet Caleb's parents. Since she was in town anyway, she decided she might as well visit me. I let her in. I didn't really have a choice. She had been trying to reach me for weeks and I had been ignoring her. But now she was right in front of me, I couldn't pretend I didn't hear the doorbell. She apologized. But then she also told me again that my actions had been unnecessary and weird. That I had been sneaky, going behind Janet's back instead of just talking to her like a normal person. I took a deep breath and explained, again, that I did what I did because I wanted to avoid drama. That I did help Janet whether she appreciated it or not. That if my mother had actually checked in on me, she would have known what I was going through. She didn't argue. Maybe for once she realized I had a point. Instead, she changed the subject to my pregnancy. We talked, sort of. I was distant, dry. She could tell I was still upset. Eventually, she admitted that she understood why I was angry, and that I had every right to be. But then she asked me to stop ignoring her. She said she wanted to be in my life. She wanted to be involved with her grandchild. I told her I'd think about it. Right now, I just need space. She left soon after. And honestly, I don't know what to make of the conversation. But at least it's over. Update 3, slow progress. It's been 3 weeks since that conversation. My mother has been texting and calling me regularly. I don't always respond, but I'm not completely ignoring her anymore. I answer when I feel like it. And if she wants to be in her granddaughter's life, she'll just have to deal with that. Janet, on the other hand? Still nothing. We haven't spoken since I last talked to Caleb. But here's the good news, Janet finally got a job. Caleb told me she's starting to pay me back. I had almost given up hope of seeing my money again, so I'll take this as a win. As for me, my pregnancy is progressing well, though the morning sickness is rough. But my husband has been incredible, doing everything he can to support me. His family, especially my mother-in-law, has stepped up in ways I never expected. She checks on me constantly, cooks for us, makes sure I'm resting. She treats me like I matter, like my well-being is a priority. And honestly, that means everything. It's hard not to compare it to my own mother. If Janet were pregnant, I know my mother would have moved in to take care of her. Meanwhile, all she's done for me is send a few texts. But honestly, I'm okay with that. I'd rather have genuine support than forced obligation. Update 4, a step forward. Maybe. 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. Janet paid me back. She messaged me, saying she had gotten her first paycheck and wanted to start repaying me for all the help I gave her. Then she apologized. She admitted she had been wrong. That she had taken me for granted. That she hoped one day we could be friends again. I felt weird reading it. Emotional. Awkward. I didn't know what to say, so I kept it simple. I thanked her and told her I hoped for the same. That was it. There are still more payments to come, and honestly, I hope she doesn't send more messages like that. They just make me feel guilty about everything, and I don't want to feel guilty. I just want to be happy. And speaking of moving forward, my mother called again this week. She wants to visit me every other weekend. She said she'd take the bus, 6 hours each way, just to be here for me. I thought about it, and then I told her no. Because no matter how much she wants to be involved now, I know she wouldn't have done this if things had been different. If Janet had been in my position, she would have dropped everything to be by her side. And I refused to be someone's second choice. My mother's offer to visit every other weekend caught me off guard. It was unexpected, especially considering how much she dislikes long trips. Her back and knee problems make travel uncomfortable, which is why she always flies, even for short distances. I knew she meant well, but I also knew this arrangement wouldn't work. First, I didn't want her to put herself through that discomfort. And second, I knew what she really wanted, to stay with me now that I'm pregnant. Normally, she prefers hotels, she likes the luxury, the privacy, the vacation-like feel of it. But this time would be different. I could already see it. She'd want to be here in my space, every weekend, and that's just not something I'm comfortable with. My husband and I work hard. We barely see each other during the week. He's aiming for a raise, I'm wrapping up my projects before maternity leave. Our weekends together are precious. I wasn't willing to give that up. But I also knew she truly wanted to see me. So I offered a compromise. Instead of coming every other weekend, I suggested she visit us on the last weekend of each month. It would give us balance, she wouldn't have to travel as often, and we'd still have our time together as a couple. She agreed. And honestly, I think it's the best decision for both of us. My mother-in-law even supported the idea. She reminded me that, despite everything, family is important. I won't lie, I miss being on good terms with my mother. What happened wasn't okay. I have every right to be angry. But I also know that people can change, that relationships can heal if both sides make an effort. And I want to try. As for Janet, that's still unresolved. She's repaying her debt and I hope she's doing well. But whether we'll ever rebuild our relationship, I don't know. And that's okay. Right now, I'm focusing on my own life. I'm happy. I have a loving husband, a supportive family, and a baby on the way. For the first time in a long time, I feel at peace. And that's all I need. Lesson to take away. This story is a powerful reminder that setting boundaries is not selfish, it's necessary. Sometimes, the people closest to us take advantage of our kindness, and when we finally stand up for ourselves, they call us unreasonable. But prioritizing your peace, your happiness, and your well-being is never wrong. Family isn't just about blood, it's about effort, respect, and mutual understanding. And sometimes, walking away from toxic relationships, even temporarily, is the best thing you can do for yourself. Does this story resonate with you? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to distance yourself from family for your own well-being? How did you handle it? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, share, and comment below. Your experiences and perspectives could help someone going through a similar situation.